This is the Telegraph podcast. It's gonna be a little different today.
That would be weird to try to figure out what somebody was typing away on, a Telegraph, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to listen to that?
Dude, how many people today know Morse code?
I know only a few phrases in it. And when I was a kid, I used to have one of those little ones with a battery and stuff you put on to practice, because I saw about getting my ham operator's license years ago, and back then that was required.
Okay.
And that rapidly abandoned when I figured out.
You'd be better off if you had the old internet, with like the dial-up.
Yeah.
You could get a really good clear. All right, hey, welcome. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm your host, Jeremy, back in the studios here at All Points TV. How's everybody doing today? It's another cold, wintry day. Just had the full moon last night. I think that was the super snow moon.
Yeah, it was big.
Wow.
It was big. It was
gorgeous.
Beautiful. But as it got up higher, it just looked not. It was a big moon, but it wasn't as big as it was when it was still in the lower part of the horizon yet.
Yeah. I tell you, what was it, a month ago? We had that, it was a full moon, and on the horizon that night, the moon was huge.
Yeah, that was. I got pictures of that, too, but kind of blurry because I was using my iPhone.
It never takes good pictures of the night. But anyways, got John back here in the studio with me, making it happen today. Going to be talking about medical marijuana. I'm going to be letting you know what's happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club and whatever else comes to mind, apparently. But hey, glad to have you guys back with us. Get this thing kicked off. I know just the other day, I think it was yesterday, actually, we had our soup kitchen for the G3C, and of course, serving it up at the North End Charities there on Stewart. Definitely want to say thank you for all of our volunteers that showed up and made it happen. Definitely big thanks to Matt, who makes it happen every month, and all you guys down there at the club who make it happen as well. Donations, your time, your effort, really appreciate it. And this time of year is no exception, that's for sure. So I know it was a little bit light-staffed yesterday, but they got the job done. Again, thank you very much. And our next soup kitchen, just so you guys all know, is March 19th. Same time, same place, all right? So mark that down if you would. Next big event that we have coming up at the club, obviously, I think everybody already knows about this, but I want to make sure I mention it, is April 20th. Hello, our 420 party. This will be actually our 11th party. 10 years of doing this, 11th party, because we partied on the first year. But at any rate, 420, it's going to be huge. We're going to be partying all day long. We're going to be stretching it out a little bit later into the day. So for those of you out there that are working stiffs and not in the medical marijuana business or whatever, try to make it a little bit easier for you in your schedules so that you can take part and have fun. I do believe that the 20th this year isn't it a Saturday? I got to double check here. Yes, it is. It's a Saturday. So with that being said, we're still trying to accommodate those of you who have to work on the weekends. But at any rate, it's going to be a fun event. We're going to do it a little bit different this year, where we've got some different fun things planned. I hear we have a henna artist, 3 different bands lined up, and a whole bunch of other goodies as well. Got some jugglers and some crazy stuff. So it's going to be kind of like a circus sideshow, if you will, with a whole lot of weed in between. So looking forward to it. Definitely want to see you guys down there. Make sure you mark your calendars for 420, April 20th. It's going to be the best day ever. It's going to be the day to be at the club. So make it happen, all right? Let's get on with the news. I got some stuff I want to share with you guys, get you guys up to date with what's happening here with marijuana in Michigan. And the first thing I want to talk about today is LARA, the department that controls our medical marijuana as far as processing applications, administering rules, whatnot. And they also are in part responsible for collecting the fees. So as you guys know, if you're a Michigan patient right now, you pay $60 for your medical marijuana card for your application. It is good for 2 years, and that is separate, of course, from whatever you had to pay the doctor to get your certification in the first place, to get that recommendation. But the fee that you pay to the state is $60. If you have a caregiver, then the caregiver is responsible for a $25 fee for their own background check. So for a total, if you're a patient with a caregiver, it's $85. If you're a patient just taking care of yourself, it's $60. And of course, the $10 change fee or lost card fee. So if you needed to change your information, maybe you had an address change, maybe a caregiver change, maybe you needed to just replace your card because you lost it, it's a $10 fee. So those are the current fees right now for Michigan's medical marijuana program for the patients and caregivers that are involved in it. Again, LARA is in charge of this, and so they got their act together. And mind you, we have a new administration in LARA appointed by the governor, and this new administration took a look at the numbers, and they said, look, we're charging way too much. Way too much. And if you remember, we've already lowered the fees down once anyways. It used to be $100 for every single year for a patient to do this. That was the fee that you paid to the state. Then they changed it. Now it's, as I stated, $60 for 2 years. It looks like we're going to be going from $60 to $40. This is not in effect yet, so don't start changing the amount that you're sending to LARA if you do need to send in an application. But it is coming up soon. So I don't have a date for you yet. They have yet to approve this, whatever, so on and so forth. But they're talking about it, and that it says here, in the coming months, the new rules should be put in place. So hopefully they'll be able to get this processed here. But at least they're admitting that they're taking more than what they really need. And in fact, actually, this is from LARA's Office of Regulatory Reinvention. What a name of an office, all right? Anyways, their statement is that the revenue generated based on the current application fee for the past 3 years is approximately 90 to 100% more than the department's operational expenses. So clearly they're taking in way more than they need from these fees directly from patients and caregivers, 90 to 100% more in actuality. And so they're looking at changing the fee from 60 to 40 bucks. They're also looking at eliminating the $25 fee for caregivers and also looking at eliminating the $10 fee for changing or replacing your card. So at any rate, that's pretty cool. Currently right now in Michigan, according to the latest reports, we have approximately 297,000 card-carrying medical marijuana patients in Michigan. And on top of that, we have 43,000 medical marijuana caregivers in Michigan. So at any rate, lots of people participating in the program, obviously. The program's doing well as far as the state goes, and hopefully they'll be adjusting these fees shortly. There is also a way that patients can renew their applications, or renew their application, I should say, online. However, this is only if you are a patient who does not have a caregiver. So if you have a caregiver, you still need to fill out your paperwork the way you have been for the past years. If you are a patient, take care of yourself and you're just renewing your patient card, and that's it, you should be able to do this in the future, and they're in the near future online. So it should help save some time in processing. They are still taking about 4 to 5 weeks to get their cards out. And that's really it in a nutshell. So hopefully we'll have some changes here. Apparently the state's cleaning up on their revenue, and at least now they're addressing it and taking care of it. So that's a good thing. All right, that's a good thing. All right, moving on here. I want to talk a little bit about DUIs. So I got the little picture here for you. It's definitely a concern here in Michigan. We're seeing recreational cannabis is now legalized for adults. Of course, we have medical marijuana as well. And there is a distinction between the two. So that's something that people need to understand. And you're going to hear about this more in the future, hopefully from a positive note and not from a negative one. So at any rate, if you are a medical marijuana patient, you have a special protection that has been created for you that you're participating in, and that's the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program. By doing so, you are allowed to have cannabis in your system, THC specifically in your system, all right? Now, I want to make this distinction because there is a distinction in the law. One thing I am not making a distinction on is that it is not okay to drive impaired, no matter what substance. Doesn't matter if you're just simply tired. If you can't do the job behind the wheel, don't get behind the wheel, okay? But for those of you that do use cannabis, whether it be medicinally or recreationally, impairment aside, let's take a look at what we need to be concerned with, okay? So first of all, if you're a medical marijuana patient, you have a legal protection in that law that allows you to have that medical marijuana inside your body, period, all right? So that actually extends out onto the road. It's not a protection for you so that you can drive impaired, of course not. But it is a protection for you that if you were pulled over and they did test you and they found THC in your system, you wouldn't be subject to an impaired driving offense necessarily, simply because it's in your system, all right? If you are not a medical marijuana patient, Michigan has a zero tolerance law. So in spite of the fact that you are allowed now to recreationally consume cannabis as an adult who's 21 years of age or older, you are not allowed to operate a motor vehicle, period. And the problem is that THC stays in your body longer than you will be impaired from that THC. So this is something to be concerned with. You could potentially use cannabis on a Friday night at your home in your own privacy, perfectly legal. Get in your car on Saturday morning and drive to, let's say, wherever you got to go to, get pulled over and be charged with an impaired driving offense, a DUI or a IUI or whatever it is they want to call it, because the THC would still be in your system. All right. Now, if you had a medical marijuana card, you'd have a legal defense for why that is in your system. If you don't have that and you're just recreationally using, there's no protection in Michigan's law for you to have any of that in your body while you're operating a motor vehicle, even though you may or may not be impaired. So this is something that Michigan consumers of cannabis need to be concerned of or need to be paying attention to. And it's also a reason why you may need to consider getting yourself a medical marijuana card if you are going to be a regular consumer. So in addition to being able to access medicinal strains and have access to cannabis, probably feasibly much more sooner than you will if it's just simply recreational, get your medical marijuana card, okay? And we just went over how much that's going to cost you. Your doctor's visit obviously would be separate from that, but I would encourage you to encourage your friends to tell them why they should still go get a medical marijuana card, even though now they can just have it recreationally as an adult. It is because it does provide you additional protections and also provide you access. So think about that. We have yet to see some cases be tried here in Michigan. I'm sure there's been a few here and there, but since the law has been changed, we voted on this just in November. It came into effect in December. We'll be watching this. And we have seen arrests go up in other states. So this is something to be paying attention to. And again, it's another good reason for you to go out and get your medical marijuana card. Okay? So let's move on here. That's it for DUIs. Let's talk a little bit about testing. All right? This has been in the news quite a bit lately. Medical marijuana testing. We're seeing numerous products being recalled. And I thought this was kind of interesting. So let me pull this up for you here. Because the products that have been recalled have been mainly from licensed facilities. Okay. Now there have been a few recalls that have involved caregiver products, but there's another thing that you need to be aware of as well. So back in December, when they closed down all of the dispensaries, or basically said, all right, you know, if you're not licensed, you can't be open, blah, blah, blah. They created a problem, obviously, with the supply of cannabis to the patients. Then they decided a couple weeks after that, let's go ahead and open it back up again and allowed the cannabis to be supplied back to these dispensaries by caregivers. In doing so, they allowed the patients to sign a waiver that says, look, I understand I am now purchasing, transferring, whatever you want to call it, cannabis to myself that is, in fact, untested. So I don't know what the test results are. It hasn't been tested. I'm okay with that. Here's my signature. Now give me my medicine. All right, so that was going on. They were also, in a sense, trying to test some of the caregivers' medications so that they could still have some tested products, of course. Some of that was recalled. I'm bringing this up because I thought this was pretty interesting when this occurred. There was a couple different things that happened. And the first one I want to call your attention to is that there's a Michigan Coalition of Independent Cannabis Testing Laboratories organization. All right, so apparently this group of testing labs here in Michigan got together and decided to create their own coalition to represent their interest in the field. They issued out a letter once Michigan had decided to allow these untested products in their dispensaries. They issued out their own letter to the state demanding that they recall this decision, demanding that they change it, demanding that they do not have untested materials allowed in these licensed dispensary facilities. So here's these testing companies saying, look, this will be a disaster. People will get sick, people will get hurt. There's going to be untested product on the shelves, and that's completely irresponsible. We shouldn't be allowing this. And I thought that was kind of interesting because these testing labs have been testing caregivers' medicine, most of them now, for quite a few years. And in fact, we've had a regulated system now for 10 years in Michigan, and we really haven't seen a whole lot of cases of people getting sick or hurt from untested materials. Now, there have been some cases where there's been mold present and people have gotten sick. That does happen. So it's not to say that it's not a concern, but to say that we shouldn't allow people to even have medication if it isn't tested is overboard, to say the least. And I thought this was kind of interesting that here's this body of businesses that supposedly are on the lookout for patients, and somehow they think that it's better off for a patient not to have medicine at all versus having something that's tested.
And they're holding the medical marijuana community with a higher degree of accountability than they do the FDA or the general pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah,
that's far more.
Yes, that is the other side of the story, John. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. The requirements that cannabis is being put through in order to be considered safe are far more stringent than what you would see for even a food product. All right, so not only would we be testing for these things, but we're testing for additional things that you wouldn't see testing be done for, like I said, some cases pharmaceutical products or even food products. And another additional thing on top of that is before it gets to the testing center, there's a whole slew of things that are allowed to be used on these plants and a whole even bigger, longer list of things that cannot be used on these plants. And some of these things that are being prohibited are regular tools, if you will, materials that would be used on any normal plant that would be used for human consumption. But somehow, when it came to picking out what would be allowed for cannabis production, the state decided to get a lot more strict and took off a whole slew of items that would normally be allowed in normal horticulture practices. So this is creating additional problems down the line, obviously, where now we're seeing these products come in and be tested and show levels of mold, E. coli, we've seen metals, other concerns. I mean, you're going to have these things happen. It's not to take away from the importance of testing and ensuring a proper product to the patient, but we have to take these things, I guess, with a little bit of common sense as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out. In Colorado, they've had similar issues and similar problems, and they have not fixed it yet. So we'll have to see how this goes in Michigan. But I also want to be aware, and I want to make you guys aware that there's certain groups out there that have decided to form and now are turning back around and saying that they represent somehow patients' interest. So they're now saying that they represent your concerns and they're standing up on your behalf and making, or at least trying to influence decisions that would affect you. And I think it's interesting that they're doing that because most of these places have never stopped to consider what your concerns are. You're not a member of their organization, so how do they represent you? And yet here they are stepping up so quick to say, hey, we're standing up for patients. Are they really, or are they just standing up for their own business? I think that's something that we really have to look at. Anyways, moving on. I digress. Let's go on here. Let's talk a little bit more about Michigan and revenue generation. And this just came out a few days ago from NPR, actually. Tax revenue, blah, 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 right? Tax projected is what the state's thinking that they're going to make this year, right? Off of tax from marijuana, $18.2 million is what they think they're going to get. So far, since the licensed facilities have come online back in October and have started selling product from their licensed grow operations, 7,002 pounds have been sold so far. That's created an excise tax revenue generation of $112,000. So that's quite a ways off from 18.2 million, obviously, if we're already, 4 or 5 months into the fiscal year. I'm not sure how they think they're going to make up for the rest of the year, but at any rate, that's where they're at so far. 7,000 pounds sold so far, $112,000 sold or collected from the excise tax. And again, right now, this is all medical marijuana. Okay, this has nothing to do with recreational. So, in a sense, not only have we charged sales tax on this item through these dispensaries, but we've also collected an excise tax of $112,000 conglomerately or cumulatively from patients. And the state's kind of bragging about it in a sense. Look how much we've collected, blah, blah, blah. I think it's kind of grotesque because they're claiming they've taken this from patients. All right? I mean, that's almost like the same as the argument that we hear about every day with pharmaceutical companies basically raking patients over the coals. You know, in one report, they talk about record profits for the year, blah, blah, blah. And then the next one, oh, it's so hard for us to deliver the product to the patient at a reasonable price. We have to keep these prices up or our company would go bankrupt. It's just kind of gross. I don't think at some point you go, wait a minute, we're supposed to be doing this to help people, not just to make money. And at some point, helping people became not really a concern, and making money became the concern of whether or not this is a good thing. It shouldn't be the measuring stick, if you will. Anyway, any rate, that's where we're at. I thought that was kind of interesting. 7,002 pounds of medical marijuana products sold since the state monitoring began in October, tallying $33,367,841 in retail sales. Again, this money that is raised is supposed to go to the school aid fund and local municipalities. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Again, the excise tax, I thought this is a good note. I should share this with you too. The provisioning centers that are collecting these taxes, it is a 3% excise tax on top of the sales tax that's being collected. That excise tax goes away March 6th, 2019. So essentially when they start, I don't know if that's actually right. That's what the paper's reporting here. All right, anyways, that's the tax. That's where it's at. If you're working with a caregiver, you don't have to worry about that. That's all I got to say about that. All right. Last time I was on a podcast, I think we were talking about states that we're still kind of taking a poll here, if you will. What's the last state going to be for medical marijuana? And one of the states I happened to mention in my comments was South Carolina. So apparently I have no idea what I'm talking about, and there's egg on my face because lo and behold, South Carolina just introduced a bill for medical marijuana. So maybe they won't be last on the list. I don't know. Utah? Idaho?
Oh, Utah just did
Utah has it already, don't they? Yeah. Right.
I was surprised by that because, I mean, the Mormon church.
Right.
They don't even like people drinking caffeine. As a matter of fact, when I knew people who were Mormons, they couldn't. The only way they could drink tea, regular hot tea, is under use the disguise of it being for medicinal purposes.
Oh, medicinal tea.
Medicinal tea.
So they're onto this now.
Yeah. So yeah.
So they're like, wait a minute, if it's medicinal marijuana.
Yeah. But I was
church
surprised.
is okay.
It's okay. I mean, but drinking coffee, I mean, come on. I mean, I would, by their standards, I'd be going to hell a long time ago. I guess.
Medicinal coffee?
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll allow it. I don't know. I never talked to a bishop about it or anything, or elder or whatever. But I mean, but it's an unusual religion because.
But Utah got it done though.
But yeah, Utah got it done. I was shocked to hear that. I really was. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see. At any rate, it won't be South Carolina likely since they're already putting bills in. Another state I wanted to bring up on today's podcast is New Jersey. New Jersey's been going back and forth, and it seems to be a rat nest of politicians and investors and patients caught in between. Obviously, because right now they're talking about a $42 an ounce tax on marijuana in New Jersey. $42 tax. Wow, that's insane. But that's what they're talking about. So there you go. I mean.
Isn't it great when elected officials can now decide what they think is needed or useful for you and decide to penalize you if they choose not? I always thought that was kind of weird. I mean, we're supposed to be the freest country in the world, yet we got ask permission from a governmental body for damn near everything. I think that's sad. I
would agree with you, John. I definitely lean more towards the libertarian type of mentality when it comes to what should government do or not do. But I do think that we're in sort of a social conundrum where we sort of, as a society, believe that regulation makes us safe. And then regulation gets passed and we see that it didn't. And all it really did was either A, created a monopoly, or B, created more revenue for the government that's supposed to be regulating it. So yeah, I mean, there is a conundrum here in the way of thinking that we sort of have, evolved ourselves into. And I think it goes right along with the degradation of personal morals, if you ask me. That's just my personal opinion. When people stopped meaning what they say, when people stopped giving their word and executing on that, when you had a person that, say, created their own product, 100 years ago, their reputation was what counted. And, things like that, we don't even talk about it anymore. The word reputation, I don't even hear that being mentioned anymore. It's like a thing of the past. Because now regulation has replaced reputation. And that's just stupid. I mean, if you think that the government's going to protect you because you paid them $10 to do so, well, here's your sign.
See, I'm old enough, probably, I'm older than you are. I remember when we still had the selective service, also known as the draft. I thought that was always ironic. The government cares about you until they find a country where they want to send you so you can go kill the native population. They'll pull you in to put you in a uniform and ship your butt there so you can go kill them for them on command. And then you're supposed to come back and try to live your life with that experience in the past. But yeah, they care about you, and they're willing to put you in harm's way to care for other people. I just thought that was such a dichotomy, such a bizarre contradiction. They care so much about you, they're willing to send your ass across the world to go get killed.
I would, add on to what you're saying here, John. Not that I disagree or anything, but I would add on to that and say that that's also the truth for when they come home. We were not treating them like, hey, you just basically put your life on the line for this country, so now this country owes you something, and we just don't seem to even acknowledge that. They get the VA and they get this and that, but are they really treated well? No, I don't think so. They should be welcomed home as heroes, whether or not you agree with what they're doing. They put their life on the line for you. I mean, is there anything that's more admirable than that? I don't think so.
Besides, where they're sent is actually up to the politicians. They shouldn't be held accountable. They're willing to step forward and do the job, especially now it's a volunteer military force.
You bet.
But they should be, our government, the people in our government should be able to have a better case than they do to make some people what they
absolutely
they do it at a drop of a hat.
Yeah, and the problem is that we're not holding our politicians accountable. If we've had politicians, in fact, John Dingell, who just passed away here not that long ago. I mean, that guy was in office when Vietnam was going on. And
his dad had been in office during the FDR administration.
Right,
he basically inherited the title, and now his wife's got it.
Not to just pick on him, but he's one of many. There's been quite a few different senators that have been in office since Vietnam, and they're still there. So how are we holding these guys accountable? Are we even bothering to consider it?
But the laziness of the electorate, though, their constituents. I mean, okay, yeah, he came on and shook your great-grandfather's hand outside of a plant that your grandfather worked at, but that's about the only contact you've ever had with this guy. You really don't keep track of what his bills or his legislation has led to you or done to you. Yet you just keep on re-electing this person.
Yeah.
And then now John Dingell's wife is holding, that's almost 80 years of one family holding sway over the rest of us. What's the difference between that and a royal family?
I was just going to say, it seems more like a monarchy than it does a republic, but I don't know. That's just my opinion. All right, moving on here. Got a couple other things I want to share with you today. Just checking on this story here from Philly. Looks like our neighbors over in Pennsylvania will hopefully have some further access to medical marijuana soon. Also recently reported in Florida, looks like they now will have access to flower products in their medical marijuana program, albeit pre-rolled joints from the government, but at any rate, at least they'll have a better selection of meds available down in Florida. Another state that's popping up here in the news is Maryland. Why am I bringing that? Maryland. This is an interesting story. Maryland beauty queen advocates the healing power of medical marijuana. I'll pull this up here for you. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Miss Maryland World, Ms. Centennial. She was crowned Miss Maryland World. How can you be Miss Maryland World? Anyways, in 2015, she suffered chronic aches, anxiety, and fatigue. She has osteoporosis, which is a bone disease. I think most people are familiar with that. She has a seizure disorder and has a pituitary tumor, also a lesion on her temporal lobe. And she says at one point she was taking 10 pills a day with little relief, so she turned to medicinal oils. She said she felt like the pills weren't working. She did her own research and worked with her doctor on this. Her doctor said that he felt like he was part of the problem because he kept just prescribing more opiates and realizing that it really wasn't benefiting them the way that they had hoped. So at any rate, she's using medical marijuana now and has found that it's obviously helpful. But says she's experienced firsthand with what the benefits are. Now she feels inclined to advocate for it and be a voice for people who are too scared to come forward and share their experience, Centennial said. Recent report shows deaths from opioid overdoses fell by 25% in states that have legalized medical marijuana. I thought I'd share that story with you on the heels of Flint joining the lawsuit and now suing opiate-producing pharmaceutical companies for the onslaught of the ramifications of using opiates in a neighborhood city like Flint.
But you know, I think it's kind of bizarre though. They're suing pharmaceutical companies, but they're not suing the doctors and the administrator. You know that.
A little louder.
So they're suing the pharmaceutical companies, but the only way you get them is if you go to a doctor who prescribes them for you initially.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying, John, but I would have to agree that the onus should be on the pharmaceutical companies because of the fact that they have a responsibility to properly disseminate information, if you will. A doctor is only as good as his textbook, in a sense. You know what I mean? So if they come in with a product, here, this does this, so on and so forth, the doctor's not the one who has done the research on that drug. He's going to take their word as gospel, unfortunately, and say, look, they did the research, here's the results, this is why I'm giving it to you. Let's monitor your progress, see how you do. But that is not really an experiment. That's just the doctor doing his job, making sure that you don't have an adverse reaction, so on and so forth. And does he bear some responsibility for prescribing that drug to you? Of course he does. But really, the person who made that drug, who gave it to the doctor, who said this drug is for these symptoms, you prescribe it, they need to be held accountable. And that's where we're not holding people accountable. I mean, there's so many different exclusions by law for drug companies in this country that it's really off the charts. Vaccines are one of them I can point to very easily. You cannot sue a pharmaceutical company or a vaccine maker for adverse reactions to a vaccine. It's by law. It can't be done. Why does that law even exist? Why can't we hold these companies accountable for things that they do? And now I'm not talking about just vaccines, but like opiates in this case. Why shouldn't they be held accountable? These companies developed these drugs. They pushed them. They tried to minimize their effects when they were pushing them. So in other words, here, these are all the great things it does. And yeah, there's a few side effects. Let's don't really worry about those. Let's get them out the door. And that's what happened. And they made billions from it. So they should reap the ramifications of their actions, positive and negative. That's the way I feel, John. So I hope that Flint and a whole host of other cities sues the crap out of them. And we saw that companies or entire businesses, if you will, are not unapproachable. They're not unsuable. Look at what happened to the tobacco companies years ago. It wasn't just one company that got hit. There were a bunch of them that got hit. And they had to change some of their practices. Maybe we need to do the same thing with these pharmaceutical companies. So at any rate, I'm getting off track here, but I think it's a good thing. And I think that we need to look at medical marijuana as a viable alternative, as not only a way to help someone, get away from opiates, maybe minimize opiate use. They certainly can be used in conjunction. We know this. There's scientific evidence for that. There's better ways that we can utilize cannabis with pain management, either to help, like I said, minimize the opiate use that needs to happen, or to maybe get someone off from opiates after they've gone through their process of recovery. If it's a long-term situation, maybe there's a way that we can use them synergistically so that we can minimize the damage from the opiates in the patient, but also maximize the pain relieving benefits of both of these properties. That's something else to be considered. So, it really gets me when we see law enforcement, try to compare cannabis to heroin. And it also gets me when we see health professionals completely deny the medicinal effects and the pain relieving therapeutic benefits of cannabis and push opiates as like the only other alternative. We need to have a better understanding of both of these things, positive and negative, and also a better understanding of their synergistic effects as well. And I mean, right there, 25% of the states that have medical marijuana, or I'm sorry, the states that have medical marijuana saw a 25% decrease in opioid use. And it's clearly because they had an alternative. I've had a number of patients myself that have made a 100% switch, and I've had a number of patients myself that have now been able to incorporate cannabis with their opiate use and seen a lot better outcome for their personal health. So that's a good thing, and I think we need to look into this more. Clearly, we need to continue just because of the fact that opium or opiate products, heroin, are listed on the national drug scheduling as the same as marijuana. It's just absurd. And we need to have that changed as well. So I'm not going to get into that today. We talk about that plenty of other podcasts. But I thought that was an interesting thing. You know, many of our people here in Michigan have been affected by the opiate crisis. And it came from their doctor. It wasn't because they started out on the street corner with a needle and some junkie. You know, unfortunately, their doctor turned them into that person. And that's not the way that this is supposed to work. So maybe we could come up with better programs for our patients. It'd be a way to go. All right, that's basically the news I have for you there for today. Definitely want to see you guys down there at the club. We got lots of fun events and things going on. I know we're working on a new menu for you guys, so hopefully we'll have some new food items coming out for you soon. Lots of other fun things going on. So stay tuned. Come back to the show. We'd love to have you here. Love to see you down at the club. You guys have a great week. Try to stay warm. Hopefully the polar vortex will be over soon. Is it over soon?
Not. They're supposed to be. Next couple of days supposed to warm up, then go back. It's been fluctuating.
All right. But at least we killed all the stink bugs.
That's what
right?
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, that's the only upside I've heard about it. Yeah,
there you
it's
go.
supposed to like 90% or 50% or whatever.
Right on. Too bad it couldn't kill all the mosquitoes too, right?
Yeah, but that's like but we couldn't do. I want a summer. I do want a summer. No.
Right. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me this week on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. You guys have a great week. Take care, and we'll see you here next week. See ya.